Greetings, 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 family. What's up? What's up? What's up? This is Chief Kalanago with another video. Hope everybody's doing well. First things first, I like to acknowledge the great spirit, universal source, universal intelligence, the great I am. Definitely want to honor my ancestors, thank them for always guiding me and protecting me, knowing that any weapons formed against me will not prosper. And anybody who intentionally tried to bring harm to me, I do not forgive. I ask my ancestors to take care of them in the worst way possible. All right. Everybody should come with respect. And that's how we do. All right. Now, I am going to allow you guys to tune into this live feed. I have a lot of information. Greetings, family. They want to honor my ancestors. All right. Have a lot of information to disseminate. For those of you that are going to be late, then that's fine. You could catch it on the replay. Those of you that's going to be live, man, I hope you enjoy it. You could get a pen and a pad to take some copious notes, or you could just go through the video a couple of times. But make sure you share the information because sharing is caring. Okay. One way of, decolonization, or what I call the on brainwashing, so to speak, of the minds, is to renew your mind. And how do you renew your mind? You renew your mind with information, not just information of any kind, but factual information. Okay. Don't allow cognitive dissonance to prevent you from elevating and freeing your mind and stepping into a life of liberty and freedom, because that's what it's all about when it's all said and done. All right. So once again, like I say, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do by any means. I'm just here to share the information. I realize that a lot of people don't have access to the information because they don't know where to find it. All right. And even if some people find it, a lot of them don't read because they can't read. And I've experienced that a few years ago doing videos, and people used to thank me, hey, Chief, man, thank you for going through that book or going through that document, because I'm such and such an age. And I'm talking about people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that couldn't read. So I took it upon myself to, always teach, but at the same time, help people that don't know how, learn the information by me helping them out that way. Okay. So this evening in this lesson, we're going to talk about the Black Christian codes. We're going to talk about pretty much the act of slavery and servants, the way they were treated. So we're going to go through that. Also, we're going to go through or talk about the foundation of the Fraternal, police organization. We're going to talk about that because, so all that we're going to talk about, you will see the relationship, so to speak, in all what we are talking about. I'm also going to talk about some major companies that literally made a fortune on the backs of slavery, and we still support them today. Okay, so we have a lot to go through. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Explain the nooses structure of Black people in America. I can't find my noose and your noose African P. I have no idea what you're talking about, family. But anyway, this, like I said, this lesson is about, the Black Christian codes, and we're gonna go through that. I may or may not read the entire thing because I wanted to go into law, talking about law, legal, and just pretty much things you need to know, okay, to protect yourself, legally. However, I felt it necessary to first go through the history of the codes and see how certain laws were developed, all right, and the people they put in place to enforce these laws through policies. Okay, so that's what I'm going to tackle this evening, and I hope you guys enjoy this to the fullest because I'm going to have fun breaking all that down to you. So if you're ready, do me a favor right now. Go ahead and type some eights in the chat. If you're ready, go ahead and type some eights in the chat. Let me know that you're with me. This is interactive. Let's make this thing happen. Type some eights in the chat and let's make this thing work. All right. All right, cool. We got some eights. We got some eights. We got some eights. That's what I'm talking about. All right, family, let's do this. Let me share my screen and we're going to go to our site. Remember, all that stuff is on the site, okay? You have that at your leisure. www.ipnan.org. This is your site. It's our site. Make sure you bookmark that and make it the best site on the internet, okay? You definitely want to have that as one of your favorites. All right, a lot of work and energy has been put into that. So let's get ready for this. Let me share my screen here. And that what I'm going through, the Black Christian codes, etc., is on the treaties and law section on our website. Okay, so let's get into that. I'm gonna download the PDF. I might have to stop sharing and go ahead and do it again and do it from the PDF opposed to the site itself. Okay, the 7 pages with a lot of information, but we'll get through it. All right, we'll get through it. We will get through it. Let me go ahead and share this. Oh, yes. Okay, so here we are. All right. The Christian Black Codes of 1724. Now, before I even get into that information, I like to, set the record straight and my goal is to put things in perspective. Okay. Once again, we American Aborigines, we were not Christians. Okay. That's number one. As a matter of fact, here's some history facts that you need to know about. We were introduced to Islam before we were introduced to Christianity. Why? Because the barbarian slave trades happened first here in the Americas, even before Christianity. Okay, there was a slight conversion of Islam, okay, in the Americas even before Christianity. Okay, we were not Christians, we were not Muslims, we did not participate in Judaism, we did not do that at all. Okay, now, does it mean that when they say, oh, well, we were pagans and savages, does it mean that we was just walking around here killing people and sinning, like they quote unquote the term that they use? No, we didn't do that. As a matter of fact, we lived in almost a perfect world. All right. And once again, people may say, well, Chief, you're being biased because you're talking about your ancestors. No, I'm telling you facts. I'm telling you what these people have said. Okay. When they came, the people that they met, the God-fearing people, Indio, okay, just the character of the people. You feel what I'm saying? We did not sell each other out. Like I'm just saying, the real integrity of the American Indians, all that stuff is written in ancient historical annals, okay? And they will not tell you about it. So I'm not trying to come across being biased intentionally. The bias happens because it's the truth. So I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so we had a symbiotic relationship with nature. We saw what they call God in everything. Okay, whether it may be the smallest animal, even in a rock. Okay, a rock you think that had no life. We saw the essence of what they call God, or well, what we end up calling the Great Spirit, what people call God. We saw that in a rock. All right. Yes, we paid heavy reference and homage to the sun. Okay, because we called the sun a female deity. All right, and we acknowledged the sun. We said we were children of the sun. All right, so that's some truth. All right. The reason why I had to kind of digress a little bit before I get into the Christian Black Codes is just to emphasize that we were not Christians. Christianity and all religion, and I've broken down the etymology of religion for you, what a legion is, and religion is bringing back that army. So they had to use the sword. They used the sword by any means necessary to convert. That's why you had to be converted. Okay, if you have a BMW that's of a certain era, and it's new, and you take that BMW and you cut it, do what you got to do, turn it into a convertible, it is not the same car. So our people did not Our people got out of their essence, all right, and lost their true nature of who they are, the relationship they had with the great spirit that we knew, okay, that was taken by force from Christianity with a sword, okay, which is the symbolism of a cross. A cross is also a sword, all right. And I already broke down the rapture and all that. So I just want to kind of let y'all know, where I'm going with all this and how it all makes sense. All right. So if you're a Christian today, ask yourself, how did you become a Christian? How did your ancestors become Christians? And even for those of you who think you're actually real Africans, there was no Christianity in Africa either. So ask yourself again, how did they become Christians? And they became Christians before us, because why? Africa was colonized before the Americas. Okay? All right, and that's facts. The Christian Black Codes of 1724, extensive breakdown. Okay? As you could see, there's an auction and Negro sale building, or a block, in the picture right here. All right, you can see there's a man sitting with a gun. Now, I don't know if it's just because it's black and white, but he sure is a dark figure. So I don't know if he was, one of the sellouts. I don't know. But anyway, I'm not going to assume that that's not really relevant right now, right? But the Black Christian Codes of 1724 were initiated during the Reconstruction after the Civil War to control so-called blacks after they were emancipated. Passed by southern states, instead of giving so-called blacks the same rights as so-called white people, the codes limited the so-called black freedom severely. Okay, now here's another true fact, okay, because I like to drop facts. Churches were not used to reverence a God that was in so-called heaven. Okay, churches were more used as a trap house. All right, I'll repeat that. Churches were more used as a trap house. That's where people used to congregate, and slave owners and people in power, it was easier to go to that one central location and talk to the minister, all right, to further their agenda. That's what churches were meant for. You feel me? That was the biggest thing for churches. All right. They included that so-called blacks had to be in service of a so-called white person, that they could not have congregations together, that they could not speak out, and that they could not have weapons. They also included that so-called blacks could not go out without a so-called white supervisor. Thus, so-called blacks had to be on the religions and holidays and gods of so-called white superiors. Hence, me giving you the details, all right, that way, okay, because the gods that you serve right now, all right, they are the gods of your so-called white superiors, all right, and not just white superiors, because the gods of the so-called white superiors are the gods of the so-called black kings and queens that converted them, okay, to Christianity, Islam, and all those different things. All right. So we have to keep that in mind. Christianity is not a so-called white man religion. Islam is not a so-called white man religion. Catholicism, Rome, okay, all those people were so-called black people. And I'm saying so-called black and so-called white because no one is black or white. So I'm going to continue to say so-called, all right, but still keep the message in context of the way they wrote it. All right. These so-called black codes were said to have been made null and void with ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865. Okay. Okay, let's read that again. These so-called black codes was said, well, the black codes are, yes, that's what they are, black codes. But when I'm going to refer to the people that they're calling black, I'm going to say so-called. But the black codes were exactly what they were. All right. Correction. Now, these same black codes were said to have been made null and void with the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865. Although many southern states adopted black codes to keep former slaves from voting and imposed other restrictions. The Fourth and 15th Amendment was supposedly had eliminated these codes, but as you read them down below and study the law of the land in conjunction with religion and politics, you will discover that these codes have been modernized in a disguise and many are still in effect. All right. So just so you know, the codes that they have right now, the policies that they have right now, they are an extension of these black codes. All right. That's exactly what they are. And they use the churches to push them. They use Christianity to push them. They use the ministers, the pastors, the bishops. Okay. That's what they use to force it on the people. All right. The Christian Black Codes of 1724. Article 1. Let's get into the articles. All right. Decrees the expulsion of the Jews from the colony. All right. What you need to know about the Jews have a long history that played a heavy impact in American colonization as well. But nobody's talking about that. Jews used to have they used to partake in white prostitution. The people that they call Jews today, they were never allowed in the Americas, period. In fact, as a matter of fact, it doesn't matter where you went in Europe, okay? They were being banished, all right, from a lot of places in Europe. In fact, they were being burned at stakes because they had this predatory, characteristics, all right, of always usurping identities, all right? And eventually what they did was, how they ended up when they used to come into the Americas, into Brazil, into Cuba, all those places, they would burn them or send them back from whence they came. So what they did was they would disguise themselves, okay, with wigs, okay, and pretend to be conquistadors, okay. Now, keep in mind, if you are able to blend with a person of so-called color, then that means the so-called Jews of that time, they were looking like the people that were doing the enslaving, which was so-called black people. All right. So when you know the history, and that's why I said it's important to know not just what happened in the Americas, but what happened from a parallel timeline, the genealogy of everything that took place. You have to know that for all this to make sense to you. Okay. So they were being expelled, period, from the Americas. All right. And that's why they were trying to separate people who call themselves Jews and blacks. They're not talking about the kind of Jews that you see today. All right. They're not talking about Jewish people. They're talking about Jews. All right. Two different ethnic groups. Okay. Number 2, Article 2. Make it imperative on masters to impart religious instructions to their slaves. And we're still talking about the 1700s. So at that time, slave masters were, again, still so-called black people. You may have had a few, mulattoes stepping up, a few so-called white slave masters stepping up. All right. But all that didn't happen until the late 1800s, when you had a whole lot more so-called white slave masters. All right. So I tell y'all giving a lot of these pale people too much credit. Number 3, permits the exercise of the Roman Catholics' creed only. Every other mode of worship is prohibited. All right. Christianity, Judaism, and Catholicism, they all came from the same mother. They were created from Abrahamic, religions. Okay. They are all part of the same faith, just different names. All right. Negroes placed under the direction of supervision of any other person rather than a Catholic are liable to confiscation. Number 5, Sundays and holidays. Holidays are to be strictly observed. All Negroes found at work on these days are to be confiscated. All right. Article 6. We forbid always so-called white subjects of both sexes to marry the blacks. Now, keep that in mind again. All right. why do you think they're talking about so-called white people here as subjects? Because, proving my point again, all right, a lot of so-called black people, white people were slaves on the same plantation, okay, but they refrained from calling them slaves, okay, they just call them indentured servantry. When the truth of the matter is, a lot of these so-called blacks came here on these same contracts, but because black means you're dead in law, okay, you're worthless, all right, then they coined that term black to people with a darker hue, okay, but they were on the plantations just like the so-called black people, working in the sun and slaving like everybody else. All right, so let us read Article 6, start it all over again. We forbid our white subjects of both sexes, not just men but women as well, to marry with blacks, period. Okay, now when you look at the writing, look what's happening here. In Article 6, you have white subjects, okay, and white is spelt with what? Upper and lower cases. You see, I tell people, when you read, you have to read with understanding. Read beyond the lines of what you are reading. But the only way to know what you're reading, you have to know exactly what's going on. So as you could see, they have white, upper and lower case in this article. Okay, this is key, very important. And then you have blacks in all uppercase. Okay, all uppercase denotes, okay, capitalization, a name or written in a name or pronoun written in capitalization addressing a person. Okay, it means that that person has lost all their liberties. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, you have capital diminutio. I've gone through a few of those before, so I wouldn't go into that right now, but just to let you know, the capitalization of the name, that's what it means. Okay, on the penalty of being fined and subjected to some other arbitrary punishment, we forbid all curates, priests, or missionaries of our secular or regular clergy, and even our chaplains in our navy, to sanction such marriages. We also forbid all of our white subjects, again lowercase, and even the manumitted or freeborn blacks, all right, upper and lowercase. Freeborn blacks had a higher status than the enslaved blacks. All right, so I'm breaking this down for you. To live in the state of concubinage with slaves, all right, should, let me see, should there be any issue from this kind of intercourse, it is our will that the person so offending and the master of the slave should pay each a fine of 300 livres. Should said issue be the result of concubinage of the master his slave, said master shall not only pay the fine, but be deprived of the slave and of the children, who shall be adjudged to the hospital of locality, and said slave shall be forever incapable of being set free. But shall this illicit intercourse have existed between a free black and his slave, okay, like I said, the free blacks were the American Indians, the Aborigines, all right? They also participated in slavery. Our ancestors also participated in slavery. Because how are you going to tell me we all came from Africa, all on the same plantation, and all of a sudden, at the same time, while that's happening, we have slaves? You see, the narrative they gave us, it just doesn't make sense when you really dive and you dissect the information. So when they're talking about free blacks and free Negroes, they're talking about the American Aborigine, aka American Indian, but they will not tell you that. All right. And I'm not proud of the fact that my ancestors played a role in slavery. Okay. Because that was a business then. It had nothing to do with the color or complexion of one's skin. It was just commerce. Okay, because when that was introduced into the Americas, all right, we participate in the business of commerce. All right, so let's read that again. At least not the entire thing, but just the last sentence or two. Okay, I think it's one sentence, but it's a long one. All right, a few lines. Give me a second here. But shall this illicit intercourse have existed between a free black and his slave, when said slave, according to the forms described by the church, said slave shall become free and legitimate. Okay, and in such case, there shall be no application of penalties mentioned in the present article. So just so you know, if an American Aborigine, which was considered a free black slave, okay, had intercourse or married an enslaved so-called black, okay, that child eventually, after most likely a 7-year period, would become free. All right, but later, of course, they changed that. All right, but that was the law. Okay. Article 7. We forbid all curates to process to effect marriages between slaves without the proof of consent of their master. And we also forbid all masters to force their slaves into marriage against their wills. All right. Just like today, I guarantee you, if you get married in a state without a marriage certificate, they're not gonna consider that illegitimate marriage. So as you could see, everything is just in a modernized version. All right, it's just a modernized version of the same, because they own the birth certificate. So therefore, and like I did a video on all that, right, talking about in loco parenti and all that, guess what? Your children are their children through that contract. So keep that in mind. All right, Article 7. The ceremonies and forms prescribed by the Ordinance of Blewis and by the Edict of 1691 for marriages or marriage shall be observed both with regard to free persons and slaves. But the consent of the father and mother of the slave is not necessary. That of the master shall be the only one required. Okay. Article 8. We forbid all curates to process to each marriages between slaves without the proof of consent of their master. And we also forbid all masters to force their slaves into marriages against their wills. I think I read that already. Number 9. Children issued from the marriage of slaves shall follow the condition of their parents and shall belong to the master of the wife and not of the husband. Why? Because it was a matriarchal society. Okay, the mother had more value when it comes to passing down wealth. You see what I'm saying? So it was easier to marry into an Aborigine woman, whether she was free or slave, and now that gave you the right, okay, a hereditary right to whatever possessions that she had, including the children. Why? Because that's her property. Okay. Same thing with the birth certificate. That's why it's important for the mother to sign. They don't care if the father don't sign. As long as the mother signed, then they're good to go, because that property was handed down to the person who owns the birth certificate, the person that the mother and father are or were subjected to. Okay. Now, if the husband and the wife had different masters, all right. Article 10. If the husband be a slave and the wife a free woman, it is our will that their children of whatever sex they be shall share the condition of their mother and be as free also as she, notwithstanding servitude of their father. And if the father be free and the mother a slave, then the children shall be slaves. Okay. Again, they always have to go with the status of the mother. All right. The status of the mother. That's why in today's time, our women have to learn and have a true understanding of what all this means. Because once you enslave your children, your property, hold your same status. Okay? Hold your status. Article 11. Masters shall have their Christian slaves. Okay, once again, as you can see, Christian in all bold letters. All right? Telling you that it's a corporate entity. Okay? Corporate entity buried in consecrated grounds. Number 12. We forbid slaves to carry offensive weapons or heavy sticks under the penalty of being whipped, and of having said weapons confiscated for the benefit of the person seizing the same. Same thing today. You have a Second Amendment right, but a lot of times they don't want you to practice that Second Amendment right because they'll send you to jail for that, but that's your right. Same thing with the codes. You couldn't even walk around with a stick. You feel me? So you have to know these things, man, so that you are able to see where all that came from and that you are not free. Okay? You're living under a disguise of freedom. You are not free. If you were, they wouldn't be forcing you to take the jab. But a lot of you might miss that. But let's proceed. All right? An exception is made in favor of those slaves who are hunting or are shooting for their masters and who carry with them a written permission to that effect, or are bring that don't make sense, or are bring designated by some known mark or badge. Essentially, they say you have to have some type of insignia or permission, all right, to carry. Same thing today. You have to ask for permission to protect yourself, which that is not part of our culture, all right? But once again, you are subjects of these people, so you have to go based on their policies. It is really that simple. Number 13, we forbid slaves belonging to different masters to gather in crowds, either by day or by night, under the pretext of a wedding, okay, or for any other cause, either at the dwelling or on the grounds of one of their masters or elsewhere, unless on the highways or in secluded places under the penalty of corporal punishment, which shall not be less than the whip. All right. In case of frequent offenses of this kind, the offender shall be branded with the mark of the flower de luce. Okay. And should there be aggravating circumstances, capital punishment may be applied at the discretion of the judges. So basically, all right, it could have turned into a crime if you are gathering to have even a wedding. Okay. That could have turned into a capital punishment as well. All right. We command all of our subject, be they officials or not, to seize offenders, to arrest and conduct them to prison, although there should be not judgment against them. Number 14. Mind you, those are the Black Christian codes, okay? Number 14. Masters who shall be convicted of having permitted or tolerated such gatherings as aforesaid, composed of other slaves than their own, shall be sentenced individually to indemnify their neighbors for the damages occasioned by said gatherings, and to pay for the first time and fine of 30 livres, and double that sum on the repetitions of the offense. So essentially, you're saying that if a master is found guilty of allowing these gatherings, be it a small gathering or a huge one, okay, at the disturbance or expense of their neighbors, all right, they would have to indemnify their neighbors, all right. In other words, that would be a form of a policy of insurance to make sure their neighbors get paid, okay. Number 15, we forbid Negroes to sell any commodities, provisions, or produce of any kind without written permission of their masters or without wearing their known marks or badges. And any persons purchasing anything from a Negro in violation of this article shall be sentenced to pay a fine of 1,500 livres. Isn't that the same thing today? Can you just go into your backyard and grow food without permission? They will come and tell you, well, hey, that's going against the state ordinance, okay? This is against policy. You can't grow food in your backyard. Family, it is the same Black Christian codes that's in effect today. Okay, you cannot protect yourself. You see what I'm saying? You have to have a license to drive when you really don't. That I will get into another lesson. But the point I'm making is this, okay? That's an extension of the Black Christian codes, all right? You think these pastors don't know about this? They know about it, or they should. Articles 16, 17, 18, and 19 provide at length for the clothing of slaves for their sustenance. Article 20, slaves who shall not be properly fed, clad, and provided for by their masters may give information thereof to the Attorney General of the Superior Council or to all the officers of the inferior jurisdiction and we put the written exposition of their wrongs into hands, upon which information, and even officio, shall the information come from another quarter. The Attorney General shall prosecute said masters without charging any cost to the complainant. It is all will that this regulation be observed in all accusations for crimes or barbarous and inhuman treatment brought by slaves against their masters. 21. Slaves who are disabled from working, either by old age, disease, or otherwise, be the disease incurable or no, shall be fed and provided for by their masters. And in case they should have been abandoned by said masters, said slave shall be adjudged to the nearest hospital, to which said master shall be obliged to pay 8 cents a day for the food and maintenance of each one of these slaves. And for the payment of this sum, said hospital shall have a lien on the plantation masters. All right, well, 22, you guys could go ahead and read that. 23, you could go ahead and read that. 24, you could go ahead and read that. 25, 26, you guys could read all that stuff. Once again, all that stuff is on the website. I just want to give you an introduction to all of this, let you know that all that stuff is here. You have 34, 35. Let's scroll all the way down. Okay. 43, 44, 50. All right. Let's start from, let me see. I want to, because I have a lot of reading to do. So I just want to go through a lot of these. Okay. So let me just probably just go to 52 or 51 and we'll continue. But I skipped a few of them that you could go read on your own. Okay. All that stuff is on the site. All right. All right. For this woman that's asking me about this slave thing. All right. Why would you ask me, was I a slave? Are you retarded? If you still haven't gotten, the reason why I'm teaching, then you don't need to be on this channel or on this platform. Okay? I'm talking about slaves because I want everybody to know the truth. That it wasn't just so-called black people. You, the so-called white woman, was a slave as well. All right? We have to put the narrative in. That's why you guys are afraid of our so-called White History Month. Because you don't want the truth to be told. So I don't just talk about slavery. I talk about everything. I talk about law. I talk about religion. I talk about everything. Whether you don't like the slave thing or not, that's not the point. It has to be talked about because why? There's no White History Month. Why are so-called white people evading the fact that there was white slavery? And that's why you guys don't like talking about slavery, because the truth will come out. So just relax, enjoy the information, all right? And start spreading the truth. That's what I want you to do. Okay? Help me spread the truth. I was never a slave, okay? And my ancestors that I know of were not slaves. And a lot of them were not enslaved. They were free, just so you know. Okay? Now let's read. "52. We declare that the acts for the enfranchisements of slaves passed according to the forms above described shall be equivalent to an act of naturalization when said slaves are not born in our colony of Louisiana, and they shall enjoy all the rights and privileges inherent to our subjects born in our kingdoms or any land or colony under our dominion." All right. We declare, however, all right, and once again, when you read the Bible, you have to read the Bible from, remember, the Bible is allegory. Okay. So the Bible, the Bible in itself is an allegory. So you have to know the different interpretations of when it was being used. Like, for instance, you see that word dominion. Okay. Dominion. The Bible said that God made man in his own likeness and image and gave him dominion over everything. Okay. Now that could be taken in different contexts. Okay, if they're talking about the free man but the enslaved man is under the dominion of the people that call themselves kings and the kings and nobility. All right. Now looking at it from the perspective of King James, All right. They made themselves lords and gods. And the people that they created, which is governmental systems, because remember, okay, a corporate entity is also a person. You see, my people, you have to learn. You need to learn the terms, learn exactly what's going on. Okay. Governmental entities are persons as well within their codes, within their policies. However, there's a distinction between persons and natural persons, which are legal persons, okay, and legis, okay, and legis is a fictitious person, and legis, okay, that entity with the all capital letters, that's a fictitious person, okay. A bank, the government is also a person, but it's a fictitious person. You feel me? But it's not a natural person. So, yes, a fictitious person can have dominion over subjects. All right? So, I'm giving you the different perspectives of how the Bible was used when it was written. King James brought that Bible here for the dominion of the Americas. It wasn't to send you to heaven. I promise you that. You have to ask yourself, right? Why would you use that same book to enslave me and at the same time tell me that's the same book that's going to free me? You're going to give me somebody in that book that took me through hell, raped my ancestors, took my land, killed babies. I mean, in the most humane way. But yet still you're going to tell me, nah, you know what? Even if the Savior did that to you when we came, that same Savior is the one that's going to save you. You see, but people, they don't want to open up their minds and realize what's going on. You feel me? Not everybody, but the majority. Okay? We declare, however, that all manumitted slaves and all freeborn Negroes are incapable of receiving donations either by testamentary depositions or by acts inter vivos from the so-called whites. Said donations shall be null and void, and the objects of said donations shall be applied to the benefits of the nearest hospital. Okay? Once again, the free Negroes they're talking about, those are American Aborigines, American Indians. Okay. I'm not going to do 53, but you guys get the essence of what it is so that you could go read on your own. So please do. I'm going to read the last one. The last one is Article 54. We grant manumitted slaves the same rights, privileges, and immunities which are enjoyed by free-born persons. It is our pleasure that their merit in having acquired their freedom shall produce their favor not only with regards to their persons, but also to their property. The same effects which are other subjects derived from the happy circumstances of having been born free. In the name of the King, Ferdinand Brosseau Perry Bienville de la Grace, March 1724. Okay. All right. So that was the Black Christian Codes. Let us go ahead here now. And let's go to the next. We're going to talk now about the Act of Concerning Servants and Slaves 1705. Let me pull up that PDF. That's also on the site as well. Okay, that one is only 3 pages, but we got some information on here, so we could read that. That's fine. Let me go ahead and share the screen here. Share my screen. Share. Pull up what's going on. Share. Boom. Boom. All right. So-called Black people cannot get reparations. Why? Because a lot of them did not come here as slaves. A lot of them came here as indentured servants. Okay. And their kings in different parts, whether it was in Africa, whether it was in Europe, they already got paid. Okay, they already got paid for sending their subjects into the Americas. Okay, even so-called white people, their masters already got paid. So most of them couldn't even get reparations. All right, although some of them got some reparations, but their reparations is what they're enjoying right now in the Americas. That's their reparations. Okay. All right, so let's read this here. All right. Now, an act concerning servants and slaves, 1705. An act of concerning servants and slaves passed by the General Assembly in the session of October 1705. Virginia's colonial government collects old and establishes new laws with regards to indentured servants and slaves. But it enacted by the governor, council, and burgesses of this present General Assembly, and it is hereby enacted by the authority of the same. 1. That all servants brought into this country without indenture, okay, if the said servants be Christians and of Christian percentage and above 19 years of age, till they shall become 24 years of age and no longer. Okay. Next, that all servants imported and brought into this country. Okay, when they're talking about country, remember, each colony was considered a country, just like how now each state is an actual country and the governor is the head of that country. Okay. Now, that all servants imported and brought into this country by sea or land who were not Christians in their native country, except Turkeys and Moors in amity with Her Majesty, all right, and others that can be due proof of their being free in England or any other Christian country before they were shipped in order to transportation, either shall be accounted and be slaves, and such be here bought and sold, notwithstanding a conversion through Christianity afterwards. Now, very important for my Moorish brothers and sisters, once again, you are not American Aborigines. You came here also, okay, as settlers. Some colonizers and some indentured servants later became slaves as well. Okay, let's put this in perspective. All righty. All masters and owners of servants shall find and provide for their servants wholesome and competent diet, clothing, and lodging. All right. Is not the same thing that's here today. You are depending on the government for your food, your clothing, and your home. So why do you think they'll always control you? Because you refuse to, not all of you, but the majority of the people refuse to be independent. No, you know what? I'm going to grow my own food. You know what? I'm going to create my own, make my own clothing. You know what? I'm going to build my own homes. Do you think these people are actually charging you for the land? No, they're not charging you for the land. They cannot charge you for land. They're charging you for the fixture that you're going to build on the land. Okay? By law, land cannot really be sold. That's why in our culture, we did not own anything. We did not own the land. The land didn't belong to us. We belong to the land. That's why they said it was lawful to come with the doctrine of discovery, because these Indians did not own anything, because we didn't claim ownership to the land. We said, nah, the land owned us. So that was an invitation to say, well, hold up, since you don't own it, we are going to discover it and we're going to say we own it. Words, family, words. Okay, words. Now, let's proceed. Neither shall at any time whip a Christian white servant naked. Now, hold up. You trying to tell me there were white Christian servants, aka slaves? Oh, wow. Why is nobody talking about that in so-called Black or White History Month? Let us read that again. All right, let's highlight that and let's read it again. All right. Let's read that again, family. That all masters and owners of the servants shall find and provide of their slaves wholesome, okay, of their slaves. Now, keyword slaves, all right. Pardon me. All masters, owners of servants, pardon me, shall find and provide for their servants wholesome and competent diet, clothing, and lodging by the direction of the county court, and shall not at any time give immoderate correction, neither shall at any time whip a Christian white servant. All right. Now, it begs the questions, who were the masters? Like I said, there were most of these masters were black so-called nobles from across the seas, mainly Europe. Okay? And at that time, you were having a little bit of rise of mulatto, okay, children stepping up into notoriety as well. All right. However, without an order of justice of peace, and if any shall presume to whip a Christian white servant naked, without such order, the person so offending shall forfeit and pay for the same 40 shillings sterling to the party injured. Okay. Next, all servants not being slaves. Remember, there's a difference between a servant and a slave. But what they're refusing to tell you is that the majority of the people they say that came here as slaves, so-called black people, did not come here as slaves. Okay. And they all did not come from Africa. Some, yes, came from Africa. Okay. But the majority of them, and yes, I am saying this, the majority of them came from Europe. Okay. Because it was just too expensive to go into Africa, then go ahead and bring them back into the Americas when they already had so-called their black subjects and white subjects in Europe. So a lot of these so-called black people, once again, the Irish, the Scottish, okay, some Britons, Germans, they were the people coming here on contracts. And like I told y'all before, the Irish, the original Irish and the Scottish, they are the same people, okay? A slight different dialect in the language, but they are the same people. They are the original Hebrews, Israelites. How did they become Hebrew Israelites? Because King James was the first Jacobite that changed his name to Israel. And he promised them this land, the land of the Red Indians, the ones that they call the children of Edom. Ah, now y'all see it's making sense, right? I hope it is. But please do your own research. Don't believe anything that I say. Okay? So like I said, the Bible is an allegory. Okay? Now let's read some more. And bound by church. All right. That all servants, not being slaves, whether imported or become servants of their own accord here. Okay? Now, read with understanding, family. Read with understanding. That all servants not being slaves whether imported or servants of their own accord here. So what does that mean? It means that a lot of our ancestors they were not imported. They became slaves and servants here on their own accord. Maybe or maybe not. But the point is, they were already here, okay? Or bound by any court or church wardens shall have their complaints received by a justice of peace, who, if he find cause, shall bind the master over to answer the complaint at court. Okay? Next, that no Negroes, mulatto, or Indians, although Christians or Jews, Moors, Mohammedans, or other infidels shall at any time purchase any Christian servant nor any other except of their own complexion or such as are declared slaves by this act. So it was okay. Now it says no Negroes, mulattoes, or Indians, okay, although Christians, because they converted, all right, or Jews, Moors, Mahometans, or other infidels shall at any time purchase any Christian servant at any time, nor any other, except there's a provision of their own complexion. So let's get into that. A lot of our ancestors enslaved a lot of their families to prevent them from being enslaved from a more brutal tyrant or from a tyrant slave owner. Okay, so a lot of them took in their relatives, all right, as servants, aka slaves, okay, by choice. That was a way of protecting their families. All right. So a lot of times when you see, well, okay, well, that ancestor was a slave, you have to know the context or the narrative of what slave meant to that person. It doesn't necessarily mean they came here in the bottom of the barrel of slave ships. Okay. It doesn't mean that, okay, they were slaves that were beaten. It could have meant that their family on record had to put them on record as a slave to protect them from being beaten, brutalized, or in the possession of a tyrant. But you see, they will not take their time and disseminate the information and break it down to you like that. Oh no, well, you all black. Oh, y'all all came from Africa on slave ships, and this is our land. No, no. Let's break this down. So when you are talking to your children, tell your children the truth. Teach your children the truth. Let them, give them a sense of value. Let them know, no, you did not come here on the bottom of slave ships in a barrel, okay? Scooshed up like sardines. That's a lie. And even if some of your ancestors did come from Africa, even if some of them did come from Europe, guess what? They still did not come here at the bottom of slave ships. They came here on contracts as indentured servants. They were not slaves. They became enslaved here. But they were not imported slaves. They were imported indentured servants. Let's go to the next one. And if any woman servant shall have a bastard child by a Negro or a mulatto over and above the year's service due to her master or owner, she shall immediately, upon expiration, her time to then present master or owner, pay down to what? Church wardens of the parish wherein child shall be born. Once again, the church was the medium for the trap house. It still is today under a different disguise. Why do you think everybody taking the job, they go into the churches? You feel what I'm saying? Family, there is nothing new under the sun. There is nothing new under the sun. 15 pounds current money of Virginia, or be by them sold for 5 years. So the use aforesaid, and if a free Christian white woman shall have such bastard child by a Negro or a mulatto, for every such offense, she shall within 1 month after her delivery of such bastard child pay to the church wardens for the time being of the parish, wherein such child shall be born. 15 pounds current money of Virginia, or be by them sold for 5 years to the use aforesaid. And in both the said cases, the church wardens shall bind the said child to be a servant until it shall be of 31 years of age. Okay, it wasn't 21, it was 31 on a lot of these so-called plantations. Okay, and for further prevention of the abominable mixture and spurious issue, it is hereby enacted that whatsoever English or other white man or woman being free. Okay, so now if you're comparing white man, so if you're comparing so-called white men to so-called white women, that means there were so-called white men and women that were slaves and indentured servants, because it's the only way to compare one is so that there was the other. Once again, when you read, you have to read with understanding. Shall intermarry with a Negro or a mulatto man or woman, bond or free. Once again, if we all were slaves, why are there free people of color, so-called color, running all over the place? But anyway, shall by judgment of the county court be committed to prison, and there remain during the space of 6 months without bail or main prize, and shall forfeit and pay £10 current money of Virginia. Next. And for encouragement of all persons to take up runaways, be it enacted that for taking up of every servant or slave, if 10 miles or above from the house or quarter where such servant or slave was kept, there shall be a reward to take up 200 pounds of tobacco, and if the above 5 miles and under 10, 100 pounds of tobacco. That no master, mistress, or overseer of a family shall knowingly permit any slave not belonging to him or her to be and remain upon his or her plantation above 4 hours at any one time, without the leave of such slave's master, interest, or overseer. So you couldn't be on another plantation or property over 4 hours if you were not the subject of that particular plantation. All right, master or mistress or overseer. Okay. So next, and if any slave resist his master or owner or other person by his or her order, correcting such slave, and shall happen to be killed in such correction, it shall not be accounted a felony. Isn't that the same thing that's happening today? Isn't so-called black boys and girls being shot down by the police enforcers, and a lot of times it's not considered a felony? They get away with desk leave. Family, there is nothing new under the sun. But I will tie all this and put this, trust me, I will put all the pieces of the puzzle together so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? But the master owner and every such other person so giving correction shall be free and acquit of all punishment and accusation for the same, as if incident had never happened. All right. And that's why they were able and still are able to get away with killing so-called black people, because you don't have any status of a living man or woman. You have no rights. You are dead in law. And if you continue to call yourself black, don't blame anybody for what happened to you. Okay? You perish for the lack of your knowledge. You feel me? Let's go to the next. All right. And also, if any Negro, mulatto, or Indian, bond or free, shall at any time lift his or her hand in opposition against any Christian, not being Negro, mulatto, or Indian, he or she shall, for every such offense, receive on his or her bare back 30 lashes well laid. Now, if for some reason there used to be pictures of this so-called black man with a lot of whips, whip marks on his back, and people talking about, oh, well, yeah, my ancestors came from slave ships and that's what they endured. Well, guess what? It doesn't mean that they didn't get the whips on their back, but it never meant that they came from across the seas. Okay? We are going to get into a few things this evening. I'm telling y'all. Well, not this evening. It's nighttime. All right? But bottom line is the sun is down, and we're going to have a lot of information that's going to be shared right now. Okay? Next, that no slave go armed with gun, sword, club, staff, or other weapon, nor go from of the plantation and seat of the land where such slave shall be appointed to live, without a certificate of living of live in writing for so doing from this or her master, mistress, or overseer. Once again, you need permission to protect yourself. Isn't that the same thing that's happening today? You cannot have a gun without them telling you it's okay. Why? Because it's the same black Christian codes. And what they do, they spend time doing what? Making sure that a lot of our young children or people have felonies before they even become 21. And how do they take your rights? Remember, Servitude, right? They could take your right by certain provisions, and one of the provisions is if you have a record, they could enslave you. That's legal. That's legal. Y'all think this is a game? All right. You know what? While I'm doing that, let me just make note of something, because before I forget, let me put that down. Okay. Statistic. Give me a second, guys. I'm just making a side note. I want to go over with you guys. Okay. Because these things, most times I just go with the flow. Okay. So let me see. The persons that no slave. All right. Next. And if any slave shall be found offending herein, it shall be lawful for any person or persons to apprehend and deliver such slave to the next constable or head borough, who is hereby enjoined and required without further order or warrant to give such slave 20 lashes on his or her back, bareback, well laid, and so send him or her home. That the baptism of slaves doeth not exempt them from bondage. All right. Well, didn't they say Jesus paid the price? So if you were baptized, why weren't you free? You see what I'm saying? So, like I tell people, man, this is not personal, man. I'm just telling the truth, man. I'm just telling you like it is. No feelings involved, no emotions involved. I'm just telling the truth. That's it. Okay. Jesus came, he was brought here to enslave you. All right. And they're telling you now, Jesus is the one that's going to free you. Man, listen. All right. Same thing. Okay. We're going to create the problem, and then we're going to create the solution. Okay. Anyway, that baptism of slaves doth not exempt them from bondage, and that all children shall be bond or free according to the condition of their mothers. And whereas any time slaves run away and lie out, hid or lurking in swamps, woods, and other obscure places, killing hogs and committing other injuries in the inhabitants of Her Majesty's colony and dominion, it is hereby enacted that in all such cases, upon intelligence given of any slave lying out, the sheriff of the said county is empowered to take such power with him as he shall think fit and necessary for the effectual apprehending such out lying slave or slaves. And if any slave that hath run away shall be apprehended by the sheriff or any other person, it shall and may be lawful for the county court to order such punishment to said slave, either by dismembering or any other way, as they in their discretion shall think fit, for the reclaiming any such incorrigible slave and testifying others from the like practices. That for every slave killed in pursuance of this act or put to death by law, the master or owner of slave shall be paid by the public. You hear that? So if a slave try to escape and the slave is killed, then guess what? The taxpayers got to pay the slave master. Man, y'all think this is a game, huh? All right. So that's that article right there. All right. Boom. Let us see what we have next. Let us see what we have next. Governing bodies. All right. So that was good. What we're going to do now, we are going to go into what we call, I'm going to go into a conversation. All right. The whole purpose of going into that conversation is to talk to you guys about slave patrols. Why is that important? That's important because I'm going to show you the segue from the Black Christian codes to slave patrols to the police association. All right. So let us get into that right now. And then you will realize I'm putting all the pieces of the puzzle together for y'all. So you will have a broad perspective, but not just a broad perspective, but an in-depth one as to what happened and why things are still happening. So all the missing pieces, that's what I'm plugging in right now. Okay. Let us go ahead and share this. Boom, 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 boom. All right. So here's an article that surrounds itself around Black Lives Matter. Okay. So while we are doing that, I do need to go ahead and look up this for y'all, which I have shown this before, but I'm going to, let me stop sharing real quick. I just think it might be fitting to go over it again, even if I've gone through it a few times. Okay. All right. Let me see. Close that out. Black means dead in law. All right, here we go.
According to mvorganizing.org, socially and politically, Black implies civiliter mortuus, which means dead in the eyes of law.
All right, just so y'all know, okay? You hear it. I just asked Google, and you heard it for yourself, okay? Let's hear it again. Black means dead in law.
According to mvorganizing.org, socially and politically, Black implies civiliter mortuus, which means dead in the eyes of law.
Okay, civiliter mortuus, okay? It means dead in law. So Black people don't exist. So therefore, when you ask yourself the question, do Black lives matter? In law, no. Family, you have to be careful what y'all fighting for, man. Y'all got to be careful what y'all fighting for. That's why Black people cannot get reparations, because they don't exist. But can you go tell Dr. Boyce Watkins and them that? Can you go tell Dr. Anderson and all? No. You see, they're too educated. You see what I'm saying? They got too many egos. Oh, you know, Chief Kalanago, who's that? You know, he doesn't have a master. He doesn't have a doctorate. How can he educate me? How can he tell me? Well, I dare y'all as Black people to get reparations. I dare you. Trust me. They would tear this entire country up first before they give dead people reparations. Promise you on that. I dare anybody to challenge me on that. Y'all think I don't know what I'm talking about, huh? But anyway, so I had to go ahead and show you that, but I'm going to share my screen real quick before we get into the Black Lives Matter. Okay? Black's Law Dictionary. Okay? The second edition. What is civiliter mortuus? Civilly dead. Dead in the view of the law. The condition of one who has lost his civil rights and capacities and is accounted dead in law. Okay? And it even states further in certain definitions, all right, that the government could choose to make you civiliter mortuus, all right, if you have been convicted. In other words, that's a legal ground to make you a slave again. All that's part of their codes. All right? Just in case y'all don't know. So let's go back to the Black Lives article. Because once again, no disrespect to my people. Black lives don't matter because you don't exist. You are dead in law. All right? And you're just fighting, beating your head against the wall, proud of something that you are not. Okay? Because it's being promoted. It's a propaganda to keep you enslaved just by that terminology alone. Okay? All right, so here we go. The racist roots of American policing, from slave patrols to traffic stops. Okay? This article was updated on June 2nd, 2020. Outrage over racial profiling and killing of so-called African Americans by the police officers and vigilantes in recent years helped give rise to Black Lives Matter movement. But tensions between the police and so-called Black communities are nothing new. There are many precedents to the Ferguson, Missouri protests that ushered in the Black Lives Matter movement. Those protests erupted in 2014 after a police officer shot unarmed 18-year-old Michael Brown. The officer was subsequently not indicted. Well, didn't I just read the Christian codes for y'all? Family, we are living under the same codes, all right? Now, the precedents include the Los Angeles riots that broke out after the 1992 acquittal of the police officer for beating Rodney King. Those riots happened nearly 3 decades after 1965 Watts riots, which began with the Marquette, Fry, and so-called African American being pulled over for suspected drunk driving and roughed up by the police for resisting arrest. Now, once again, there's nothing new under the sun. Why is all this continuously happening and it will not change? Is because you are black, okay? Not because of the color of your skin. No, because you have the status of being black. Black is not the color of your skin, okay? It's the status that means target, dead man walking, dead woman walking, okay? Privileges that can be taken away, no rights. 3/5 of a human. But you just can't tell some people anything. All right? Now, I'm a criminal justice researcher, the person who wrote this article, who often focuses on issues of race, class, and crime. Through my research and from teaching a course on diversity in criminal justice, I have come to see how the roots of racism in America, policing first planted centuries ago, have not yet been fully purged. Okay? And it will not until you give up the status. Give it back. Let's abolish Black History Month and step into our proper status as American Aborigines. Slave Patrol. What is Slave Patrol? There are 2 historical narratives about the origins of American law enforcement. Policing in southern state holding states had roots in slave patrols. Squadrons made up of so-called white volunteers empowered to use vigilante tactics to enforce laws related to slavery. They located and returned enslaved people who had escaped crushed uprisings led by enslaved people and punished by enslaved workers found or believed to have violated plantation rules. That is slave patrol. Today is the same thing. It's just a different name. The first slave patrol arose in South Carolina in the early 1700s as University of Georgia social work professor Michael A. Robinson had written. By the time John Adams became the second U.S. president, every state that had not yet abolished slavery had them. They had slave patrols all over. Okay, it just wasn't called police yet. Okay? Members of the slave patrols could forcibly enter anyone's home, regardless of race or ethnicity, based on suspicions that they are sheltering people who had escaped bondage. Isn't it the same thing today? They could burst into your house sometimes without a warrant if there's reasonable, articulable suspicion. But we will get into all that when it comes to protecting your rights, because Chief Kalanago is going to drop them jewels. All right? The more commonly known precursors to modern law enforcement were centralized municipal police department that began to form in the early 19th century, begin in Boston and soon cropping up in New York City, Albany, Chicago, Philadelphia, and elsewhere. The first police forces were overwhelming so-called white males and more focused on responding to disorder than crime. Okay, as Eastern Kentucky University criminology Gary Potter explained, officers were expected to control a dangerous underclass that included so-called African American immigrants and poor. Through the early 20th century, there were few standards for hiring or training officers. Police corruption and violence, particularly against vulnerable people, were a commonplace during the early 1900s. Additionally, the few so-called African Americans who joined police forces were often assigned to so-called black neighborhoods and faced discrimination on the job. In my opinion, these factors controlling disorder, lack of adequate police training, lack of so-called non-white officers, and slave patrol origins are among the forerunners of the modern day police brutality against so-called African Americans. Okay, now we have the Jim Crow laws, and we just went over the Black Christian codes. Okay, so we're not going to get into all that right now. I just wanted to show you a correlation or the relationship of the police department, that fraternal order, okay, and slave patrols. All right, just had to do that. Now, let us go into the what we call the Fraternity of Police of the Police, FOP. All right, and see exactly what we're talking about, where it came from, and make the connection. Let me stop sharing my page. Remember, servitude motus means that you are civilly dead. You have no rights. Okay, you have no rights. Let me close that out. Close this out, and let us go here. Boom. Let us share this. And do me a favor, guys. If you're going to support, please do not do it on YouTube because YouTube is bugging right now. So go to our website and then you could donate here on the website. Okay. Here we go. Fraternal Order of Police. The Fraternal Order of Police, FOP, is a fraternal organization consisting of sworn law enforcement officers in the United States. Now, right there, let's stop. The police department is an organization, a fraternal organization, okay, in the United States. It reports a membership, okay, you have to have a membership of over 355,000 members organized in 2,100 local chapters and lodges, state lodges, and national grand lodge. Okay? Masons. For those of you who don't know, the organization attempts to improve working conditions of law enforcement officers and the safety of those they serve through education, legislation, information, community involvement, and employee representation. Okay? FOP, Fraternal Order of Police. Subordinate lodges may be police unions and or fraternal organizations, as the FOP has both labor lodges and fraternal lodges and describes itself as a full-service member representation organization. So that organization, they have their own codes. They have their own ethics of how they could run their organization. Don't care. It's not about you. It's about the organization. Okay? Lobbies Congress and regulatory agencies on behalf of law officers, provides labor representation, promotes legal defense for officers, and offers resources such as legal research. But we're going to get into the history of that real quick. History of that fraternal order. The Fraternal Order of Police was founded in 1915 by by two Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania patrol officers. Okay. Once again, it's an extension of slave patrol. Martin Toll and Delbert Nagel. Okay. They and 21 other members of Pittsburgh Bureau of Police met on March 14th, 1915, establishing the first local of the Fraternal Order of Police, Fort Pitt Lodge number 1. The FOP official history states that the founders decided to not use the term union because of the anti-union sentiment of that time, but nevertheless acted as a union, telling Pittsburgh Mayor Joseph J. Armstrong that the FOP would bring our grievances before the mayor or council and have many things adjusted that we are unable to present in any other way. We could get many things through our legislature that our council will not or cannot give us. Now, let us go to the two main founders. Okay, let us look at Martin Toll and Delbert Nagel. For those of you, Toll, okay, which is another version synonymous with O'Toole, okay, or Nagel, they are both Irish ancestry. Okay. Yep, absolutely, brother Pharaoh. Yes, indeed. All right. Now, let us go look a little further into the names Tol or Otol and Nagel. All right. So I've gone into Ireland, Ireland calling. Okay. Let us go ahead and let me stop sharing this immediate screen and share this one with you. Okay. Let me share this one with you. Hold on for a second. Share. Boom. Let's share that. All right. Now, Ireland calling. We have Otol or Otol. Okay. That's the same variation of the name. Prosperous or mighty people. Okay. Let's do a little reading because I like to go in depth to connect my pieces. All right. The Otol family are derived from Tothel, who was a king of Leinster in the 10th century. They were once one of the great septs or clans of Leinster. There are numerous variations of the name, including Tol and Tual. It is not known for sure that Tual means, but many scholars have suggested it meant mighty people. Others disagree and believe it meant prosperous. Either way, it's from Irish descent. Okay, so we just looked at Tol. Let us go look at Nagel. Okay, let us look at Nagel. And I'm going to take this link, which I think I may have put it in the description. I think I did. But just so that you may be able to do your own research, here we go. All right, I put that in there for you as well. Stop sharing this and let's go look at Nagel, the name Nagel. All right. One of the two original founders or two of the original founders of the Fraternal police. Okay. Let's go ahead and share this. Because if you don't know where you came from and you don't know exactly what happened, how it transpired, how are you going to deal with this situation? Okay. You are literally, a snake walking around without a head or a chicken walking around without a head. All right. This stuff is important. You got to know. Okay. Nagel. The Nagel coat of arms. All right. Let us read a little bit about that. The family history of the ancient name Nagel was found in the Irish surnames.com archives. Surnames developed, all right, developed different, or roots, blah, 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 blah. But I'm just showing you where the name came from, okay? But let's read a little bit here for a second. I want to read from here, right here. Boom. Exactly where I'm going to highlight right now. Okay. Variants of the name Nagel. Let me just blow that up a little bit. Okay. Variants of the name Nagel includes Nigel, Nagel, and Nigel. The Nagels were a branch of the Angelus, who were called Nangu in North Continent. After the invasion at the end of the 12th century, this famous Norman family owned vast estates. The leading De Angelis family adopted the surname Macostello, but this did not apply to the Cork branch. Notable people of that name were Sir Richard Nagel of 1699, who was Attorney General and Speaker of the Irish Parliament in 1689, and Admiral Sir Edmund Nagel in 1759 to 1830, who captivated King George, the Fourth, by his rock-willing Irish humor and his ability to tell a good story. Now, King George, the kings at that time were so-called black men. So these Irish people that they're talking about, they were so-called black people. And their servants were so-called white people. So literally, what's happening now is a flip version of what happened to these people. Once again, that's why I take my time to break all these things down for you, so you could see the relationship of where I'm going with this. So they were being policed by these so-called black nobles. Now everything is being flipped. Now let us look at that time around 1699. We are talking about the time of King George. Not King George came into power a little later, but King James, you know what I'm saying? King George King George this let me see, the second, but either or. The point is, at that time, King James was making things happen. All right, but let's look at something here real quick. Let's go look at something from Gestor, and let's look at the Jacobites, Judges and Black Book of Kings Inns, Dublin, 1689 to 1693, which kind of like correlates with the date we just spoke of 1699. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick, and you will see how all of this makes sense. And again, proving from another angle that King James was a Jacobite. Okay? And he was the king of the Israelites. And that the real Israelites, okay, are from Scotland and Ireland. All right? Let me go ahead here and... Here we go. Jacobites, Judges, and the Black Book of Kings, Inns, Dublin, 1683, 1693. Colum Kenny. The Black Book of Kings, Inns, contains within its covers records of a society of judges and other lawyers that was founded almost 5 centuries ago in the dissolved Dominican Friary on the banks of River La Fay, a society that is still active today. It is a unique historical source, not least for the troubled reign of King James II. All right, let us get into the King Jameses now. The Black Book folios refer to the period from the society restoration in 1607 until the year 1730. All right. Now, why is these dates important? Because all these dates, all right, were literally kings that were so-called black. Okay. They didn't start losing their power until the late 1700s. In fact, I'm talking about not even late 17, I'm talking about mid 1500s to late 1800s. That's when they started losing their power. Okay? That's when they started losing their power. So they were the Jacobites. And King James made himself king of the Jacobites and said that he had a vision. Okay? He wrestled with an angel. He put it in his Bible, in his mama's book, ancestry book, in his family tree. He had a wrestle with an angel, and the angel told him to change his name to Israel. So when they brought their subjects, okay, who are the Israelites, into the Americas on contracts as servants, then when King George took over, King George said, nah, we ain't having that. No more servants. Let's bring the real slavery back. That's let's do the money thing. And then people became enslaved. Hence, Deuteronomy 28. Okay? So once again, I'm showing you this from all different angles, putting the pieces and the dates together. All right? Throughout that period, there were no years more faithful for Ireland than those that marked the reign of King James II. The only king ever to visit King's Inns, the Catholic king assisted the throne in London in 1685, but was unceremoniously ousted there 3 years later in the Glorious Revolution that saw the Protestant William of Orange supersede him. Okay, like I said, all religions came from the Catholic Church. Okay, King James, that gave you the Bible, that converted you into a Christian, was also a Catholic. And he was also a so-called black man. All right, but I don't have to read all of this. Okay, I'm just giving you some foundation of where I'm going with this and what's the connection to now. Why do you see most law enforcement, over 80 to 90% of them are from Irish, Scottish, a little bit of German, and a little bit of British, but predominantly Irish and Scottish. Why is that? Why do you think so? Because those Irish kings, so-called black kings, they were enslaving these people. And then when, of course, like I said before, they married their so-called white concubines, those mulatto children start to change the dynamics of the crown. So these people know the history. Why do you think there's no White History Month? Because if you dig too deep and you're able to connect the dots, you know exactly what's happening to our people right now. The only problem is they do not differentiate between the Negro de Terra and the Negro de Guinea. They put all of us in one box. They are not differentiating between the American Aborigines. Also, a lot of our ancestors played a role in that. But these people they're not doing this because they don't like your skin. No, they're doing it because of where they came from. Because they came from being servants and slaves of those black nobles on the other side. Jailbirds, vagabonds, criminals dumped into the Americas. And that's why they had to use the so-called black servants and slaves to fight together with. And after they fought together, they say, nah, man, we know where we came from. We want it all. Hence, the United States became the dominant power. All right, I'm going to take that link. I think I put it in the description as well. But if I didn't, I'm going to put that in the chat for you guys. Here we go. I'm just connecting the dots. You don't think I'm making all this stuff up, okay? But not that I'm saying you're thinking that, but I like to give proof of everything that I'm talking about for the most part, if I could find it. All right. So we went to the Fraternal Order. Okay, we're gonna read a little more up just on that real quick. Okay, let's read a little more on that. Fraternal Order. Here we go. All right, so we're going to continue reading about the history of the Fraternal Order, okay? In 1918, it was decided that the order should become a national organization. It wasn't a national organization before 1918, okay? It's a private organization that's controlling our lives. The order's constitution stated that race, creed, or color shall be no bar, but that's not true. That was only because it had to be presented that way, to be impartial to race, creed, or color, okay, for it to become a success. And once it was established, then they could have pulled the race card because it was already established. Now, the Constitution also had a no strike pledge, but this has not been enforced. This has not been enforced since 1967, when the FOP police Youngstown, Ohio, refused to work during a slavery dispute. In 1974 and 1975, the FOP stated that it would take no action against members who violated the anti-strike clause until all efforts were exhausted on the local state level. During the 1960s, the FOP opposed the creation of police review boards, spearheaded by Robert F. Kennedy, at one point describing them as a sinister movement against law enforcement. Okay, Robert Kennedy wanted to do what? He wanted to create a police review board, but they opposed that. Why? Because that's what they were using that organization for: corrupt law enforcement. Okay. The FOP also clashed with the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, on the issue of police brutality, seeing it as a liberal attempt to discredit law enforcement. So at that time, law enforcement had nothing to do with the police. Okay? It came from slave patrol. It had nothing to do with law enforcement. Law enforcement were sheriffs. okay, which is actually appointed. So how did they become law enforcement today? You tell me. The FOP also clashed again with the American civil liberties. Now, we don't care about your civil liberty now, man. We gangsters. That's why today, I'm not saying all police officers. Mind you, I'm not putting everybody in a box. That's why when they run up on you, it's that gangster attitude. If you don't listen, they're so fast to pull that gun, so fast to pull the mace, so fast to tase you. You know, surround you, 10, 15 of them. You know, you try to defend yourself, they're going to beat you up. It's a gang. Because that was the foundation of that fraternal organization. The order was heartened by Richard Nixon's emphasis on law and order, though it claimed to remain strictly a political. Okay, so now they have the emblem and motto and all that, talking about the blue line. That's why with the flag with the lines, the blue line, desecrating their American the United States flag, but that's their business. I ain't got time for none of that. All right, but I'm just giving you all that information that you could go read on your own. Okay, organization of membership. Again, it's of a membership. When you apply to be a police, it's a membership. All right, the FOP Constitution and bylaws provide that active membership is open to any regular appointed or elected and full-time employed law enforcement officer of the United States. Any state or political subdivision thereof or any agency may be eligible or membership, and that each state and subordinate lodge shall be the judge of its membership. You see, it's of its membership. They create the terms and conditions. So let me ask you a question. As American Aborigines, why don't we have our fraternity of marshals, police, or sheriff? You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with this? But nah, y'all want to be black and African American. And those of us who know we Aborigines, I got to be begging people to come together so we could do something. So you see where we are at with that. All right. Local lodges often have provisions for retired law enforcement officers. The subordinate lodges are supported by state lodges, which are subordinate to the Grand Lodge. The Grand Lodge is the national structure of the order. Say no more. Okay. Say no more. It's a lodge. Okay. It's a lodge. In 1978, the order had 138,474 members, 1,250 lodges, and 34 state structures. In the late 1970s, the order's headquarters were located in Indianapolis, Indiana. The national organization has 3 offices: Labor Services Division, Columbus, Ohio; the Steve Young Law Enforcement Legislative Advocacy Center in Washington, D.C., and the Grand Lodge at NIP OHM Center, national headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. Okay. Fraternal Order of Police Auxiliary. All right. They have the Fraternal Order of Police Associates. All right. So all that stuff is on here. I think I put that link in the description for you guys, so you could go ahead and do some independent reading yourself. Okay. I'm going to put it here again. All right. Let me stop sharing that. Close that out. Close that out. Let me bookmark that. I might need that for future reference. So I just bookmarked that. Close that out. Okay, we spoke about. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go talk a little bit about at least 2 of the major companies that you may be familiar with that build a fortune on enslaved people. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen again. Share that. And all that is relevant, okay, to show you the type of system that we're in. And you have to wrap your head around that, okay? We have the Atlanta Black Star. And let us just read here a little bit. I may not read the entire article, but who knows? It depends on how I feel. Let me drink some water. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. All right. 15 major corporations you never knew profited from slavery. I'm not going to do all 15 of them, but I'll do probably two of the main ones. Okay. You may see them on the cotton field thinking, oh, well, these are enslaved Africans. No, those are American Indians. Okay. And then we're going to talk about black burden, which is something that I'm going to introduce you guys to. All right. And I will conclude with black burden. Okay. Let us read here for a second. The enslavement of, I would say, indigenous people, because it is telling history. Okay, it is telling not history because that's his story. It is telling our story in how would I put it? In a bias on truthful, perspective. So I'm gonna say the enslavement of indigenous, okay, so-called black people in the Americas by the nations and peoples of Western Europe. Mind you, they were also so-called black people as well. All right. Created the economic engine that funded modern capitalism. Therefore, it comes as no surprise that most of the major corporations that were founded by the Western Europeans and American merchants prior to roughly 100 years ago benefited directly from slavery. Okay, yes, the Lehman Brothers. Okay, the Lehman Brothers, whose business empire started in the slave trade, recently admitted their part in the business of slavery. According to the Sun Times, the now defunct financial services firm acknowledged that its founding partners owned not one, but several enslaved indigenous people during the Civil War, or just enslaved people, because slavery wasn't just about black people or so-called Africans. Okay, it was about white, it was about Asian, everybody was enslaved. All right, so we got to put this again in its proper context. That's why the education is key. When they control the educational system, they could teach our children anything. Okay, now let me see. All right, but several enslaved people during the Civil War era, and that in all likelihood it profited significantly from slavery. This is sad, but part of people's heritage. We are deeply apologetic. It was a terrible thing. There's no one setting in the United States in the year 2005, hopefully, who would ever in a million years defend the practice, said Joe Polizito, General Counsel of Lehman Brothers. We also have Aetna. All right. Aetna Inc., the United States' largest health insurer, apologizes for selling policies in the 1850s that what? Reimbursed slave owners for financial losses when the enslaved people they were owned dead. Okay, Aetna has long acknowledged that for several years shortly after its founding in 1853, that the company may have insured the lives of slaves, and said Aetna spokesman Fred LaBerge in 2002, we express our deep regret over any participation and all in the deplorable practice. Now let me ask you a question. How come we aren't suing them? Why we ain't suing them? Because you see, y'all don't know your history. So you cannot bring a lawsuit, okay, that would hold because you think you're black. And you all think you're Africans. See, that's the problem. But as you could see, there was insurance on slaves. So whether they died or they suffered some type of injury, the slave masters were still getting paid. They had insurances like your car, okay? Like your home. Y'all better recognize. Let's go to the next page, family. Let's go to the next page. I'm not going to do all of them, all right? Just going to do a few, okay? Let's go to the next one. JP Morgan, one of the main ones, okay? Chase Bank, that's right. We support them all day, every day, right? That's what we do. We give them more business. Let's read this here for a second. And this is not alleged, okay? They admitted that, just so y'all know, okay? Today, we are reporting that this research found that between 1831 and 1865, two of our predecessor banks, Citibanks and Central Bank in Louisiana, accepted approximately 13,000 enslaved individuals as collateral on loans and took ownership of approximately 1,250 of them. When the plantation owners defaulted on the loans, the company wrote in a statement. So let me ask you, if you take possession of about 12 to 1,300 slaves, what happened? That means you had to sell them to make your money. All right then. New York Life. New York Life. Insurance company, because that's what they were doing. They were insuring slaves. Okay? Insurance company is the largest mutual life insurance company in the United States. They also took part in slavery by selling insurance policies on enslaved people. Let's stop saying all Africans were slaves. I'm not going to stand for that. Okay? According to the USA Today, evidence of 10 more New York life insurance, New York life slave policies come from an 1847 account book kept by the company Natchez. Okay, that's indigenous now. Miss Agent W. Britton, the book, part of the collection at Louisiana State University, contains Britton's notes on slave policies he wrote for the amount ranging from 375 to 600. A 1906 history of New York life says 339 of the company's first 1,000 policies were written on lives of slaves. Okay, let's go to and do a couple more, and then y'all could read the rest on your own. We're just going to do a couple more on that, and then I'm going to go to Black Burden, and then I will conclude. Okay. Wachovia. I think that's a bank as well. Wachovia. All right. USA Today reported that Wachovia Corporation, now owned by Wells Fargo, has apologized for its ties to slavery after disclosing that two of its historical predecessors owned enslaved people and accepted them as payment. Why aren't we coming together and owning these businesses? They cannot say there's no statute of limitation on that. I promise you that. Okay. On behalf of Wachovia Corporation, I apologize to all Americans and especially to African Americans and people of African descent. What about the indigenous American Aborigines? Let's talk about that too. Wachovia chairman and chief executive officer in the statement, we are deeply saddened by these findings. Even if it's not your fault, you're still reaping the benefits. Why aren't we coming together? Like I told y'all before, everything I do, there's a madness to it. Okay? Crazy people change the world. Okay? N.M. Rothschild and Sons Bank in London was linked to slavery. The company that was one of the biggest names in the city of London had previously undisclosed links to slavery in the British colonies. Documents seen by the Financial Times have revealed that Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the banking family 19th century patriarch, made personal gains by using enslaved people as collateral in dealings with slave owners. Okay, so guys, I'm gonna take this link, which I think I may have put it in the description already, but I will put it again. All right, so that you could go ahead and do your own research, do your own due diligence. Okay. It's all there, just so y'all know. Okay. So let me put that in there for you. Copy that and Put that in the description. Here we are. Boom. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to go to a term called black burden. Okay, black burden, like a bird. Okay, burden. Okay, let me go ahead and close that out. And go here. And then let's go and share this. I think the link is already in the description, but I'm going to take it again. And I'm going to share it here. Boom. Okay. Share my screen. All right. Here we go. That's in the description as well. All right. Deconversation.com. All right. Now look at these children. You might think, well, hey, you know what? Those are African children, African slaves. Well, guess what? They're not. They're from the Caribbean to Queensland, Australia. Okay. So some of the Aborigines are from the Americas. Like I told you, we have a lot in common with Australian Aborigines because a lot of them also came from the Americas. But what do I know, right? From the Caribbean to Greenland, re-examining Australia's black burden past and its roots in the global slave trade. All right. There are moves afoot to scrub colonial businessman Benjamin Boyd's name from the map. The owners of historic Boyd Town on the south coast are planning to change its name. While Ben Boyd National Park may also be renamed, residents in North Sydney will take part in a survey to rename the Ben Boyd Road too. The reason Boyd's links to black burden in the 19th century. Black burden was a term given to trade of kidnapping or tricking Pacific Islanders on board ships so they could be carried anywhere to work in Australia. Okay, they were also doing black burden in the Americas, not just taking them to Europe and Australia and all those places. No, they were taking indigenous people from the Caribbean, South America, North America, and putting them in different parts of the Americas and telling them they came from Africa. That's called black burden. Taking them from surrounding areas, taking them from one location to the next, and making them think, telling the people that were there, they are from some far land or whatever the case may be. That's black burden in essence, okay? Black burden was a term given to a trade of kidnapping or tricking Pacific Islanders on board ships so they could be carried away to work in Australia. Boyd instigated this practice in the late 1840s, bringing the first group of Pacific Islanders to work on the land in Australian colonies. Although this scheme ultimately failed, all the labor trades would deliver approximately 62,000 islanders to Queensland and north-southwest between the 1860s and the 1900s. The moves to rename the sites are largely due to Australian South Sea Islanders' struggles for recognition of what their ancestors endured. They often prefer the term slavery to indentured labor and demand full acknowledgement of what happened. Okay? Because they're calling them servants that became slaves. So now they don't want them to call themselves slaves, right? You see the trick. All right. One way this might be achieved is by trafficking or tracing Pacific Islander black burden back to its roots and placing it within the global context of slavery. This history, painful and provocative as it may be, or as it might be, offers a way to bridge the division between those who are proud of Australia's sugar pioneers and Australian South Sea Islanders who are still dealing with the losses from this ugly past. All right. Now, if you want to read more on that, the link is there. You could go ahead and read that as well. But they were also doing black burden in the United States, taking indigenous people from one place of the Americas to another place of the Americas. All right. So, guys, I wanted to go into all of this. All right. Before I got into law, legal, and protecting your rights, because you have to have a foundation, a history, a more in-depth and a more accurate, okay, story of what happened, how it transpired, when it happened, where it happened, and with whom. Okay. Now, once you have all that information, you are able to stand firm on your grounds. You see what I'm saying? Because you have enough documentation to validate the things that you speak of. That's why when I speak with such confidence. That's why when I speak from a perspective where I have no fear, because I know the truth. Now, if you're going to violate my rights, then you could do that. I'm not saying you can't, but you're not going to do it because I'm ignorant. You see what I'm saying? There's a difference. I'm not going to do it by giving my consent. I'm not going to acquiesce, rather. Okay. I'm not going to acquiesce to my rights being violated because of my ignorance. No. People perish for the lack of knowledge. Now, if you so choose to do it because you got the big gun, that's on you. But I'm going to stand firm to literally articulate my rights. All right. Now, so like I said, in another video, I will get into, the laws, the Constitution, couple of treaties, declarations, breaking down reasonable, articulable suspicion, search and seizures. I will get into all that. Okay. Now, guys, do me a favor, please go to the site and show your love, social, some support. I'm not going to beg y'all to do it. Y'all see the work that I'm doing. So again, the laws of reciprocity. Okay. I'm pouring into you. So just please go to the site and show some support. And I'm going to get some rest right now. I gave y'all 2 great videos, lessons or lectures today, literally over 2 hours each. Okay, so go ahead and show your love. I hope you found value in the information that was presented this evening. Please, I'm asking, share the information, teach your children, take your time, do the research, cross-reference. Okay, you may find some more things, okay, that I just didn't have time to go over, or I probably just didn't know. Okay, I am not aware of everything. I am well studied, but I promise you there's a lot I still am not aware of. But I know enough to know how to put the puzzles together. Okay, I know enough of that. All right, so I want to thank you for being a part of the build. I hope you guys get some rest. Continue to be good to each other. Continue to live your life with integrity. Focus on building. Focus on coming together. You see where we are at, okay? The only way to get redress, I promise you, the only way to get redress is not as Black people. I promise you that, okay? It is not going to happen. It will not happen, okay? It will not happen. And I've given you enough information so you could see why it will not happen. I promise you, 100, 200, 5,000 American Aborigines coming together, putting a suit together, will get redressed faster than millions of these so-called Black people looking for reparations. I promise you that. Because there is irrefutable documentation, okay, that we could present. So pretty soon I will be opening up membership to our organization, which is what the site. I wanted to make sure I bring the knowledge first. I didn't want people to just be members of our organization, which is the organization that I created, Indigenous Peoples Native Autochthonous Network. I didn't want it to just be a network, okay, just fighting or standing for the rights of original indigenous people without them not being educated. You see, the goal is we have to make sure everybody is equipped with the knowledge. So it's not just Chief Kalanago, all right? I want to put my mind into 10,000, 20,000, a million minds, okay? So no matter what happens, that information will be in a million minds. You see what I'm saying? That's my goal. So that's why I had to make sure I did my due diligence and put the information together, structure the information, and give it to you, and not just put it on the site and say, hey, go to the site and do your own thing. I'm taking my time, I'm reading it, I'm breaking it down. Things I don't have to do, but I'm doing it. Because, like I said, there's a madness behind everything that I do. Okay? And it's me being crazy that's going to take it to the next level. I respect everyone. Okay? But our truth have to be told. I am pushing for us to abolish Black History Month. I need y'all help with this. How can you help? By start teaching the people around you. Give them the information. You ain't got to force it on them. Don't hate them. Okay, just give them the information. Hey, would you mind checking something out? Send it to them. Teach the children. Go into churches. Have a conversation with the pastor. You never know what might happen. I know a couple of pastors that's actually on the right path and doing the right thing, because I've gone to their churches and talked to their members. So not every pastor, okay, is selling everybody out. You see what I'm saying? But how do you know unless you have the conversation? So I cannot do this alone. I refuse to do it alone. Okay? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make myself a martyr for anybody. You have to value your friendship as much as I value mine. Okay? You have to value your own identity as much as I value mine. I'm not going to value yours more than you do yourself. However, I'm giving you the information so you have enough to stand on. So you could build your confidence as to who you are when you say that you are who you are. I'm giving you guys a lot of tools. All right? So guys, once again, if you found some value in this information, type some "it's" in the chat, and let's close this off and let's get out of here, okay? Chief Kalinago got to get some rest. Got to get some rest. When you do a lot of this stuff, sometimes, you get a little, like just mental tired. I'm not physically tired, but, sometimes mental tired. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to relax myself, chill for a minute. And that's it. Get some rest. Okay? Y'all take care. I love you guys and have a great continuation. Okay? We'll talk soon.